The fluorescent lights hummed softly in the discount supermarket as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the front windows, and the air smelled faintly of disinfectant and cardboard as Sarah stood at checkout lane 5 for her 3-year-old daughter, Lily clutching a worn stuffed rabbit, while her 7-year-old son Jake helped unload the cart, his small hands carefully placing each generic brand item on the conveyor belt. If you believe no one should be judged for doing their best, like, share, and subscribe. Sarah had been working double shifts as a hospital custodian for 8 months since her ex-husband stopped paying child support and disappeared across state lines. Her paychecks stretched so thin they were nearly transparent, and this grocery trip represented 2 weeks of careful meal planning, coupon clipping, and calculator math. The cashier, a teenage girl with purple streaks in her hair, scanned each item with practiced efficiency, her expression neutral and professional. But the woman behind Sarah in line designed her purse fresh manicure. The kind of put-together that screamed money, and judgment started making comments under her breath. "Can you believe some people?" the woman said to her companion, her voice dripping with disdain as she watched Sarah's generic pasta and store-brand cereal move down the belt, using government assistance to buy junk food while the rest of us work for a living. Probably has a nicer phone than me, too. Sarah's face burned hot with shame, her hands shaking slightly as she continued helping Jake unload, and she noticed her son's shoulders tense, his young face showing the kind of anger that comes from watching your mother be humiliated and being too small to stop it. The elderly man behind the judgmental women looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight and studying his own cart. And 2 other customers in adjacent lines glanced over but quickly looked away, suddenly fascinated by the magazine rack. Sarah felt that crushing weight of being seen but not defended, of being judged by people who knew nothing about her life, her struggles, her midnight tears over bills she couldn't pay. She took a slow breath through her nose, squared her shoulders, and looked down at Lily, who was humming softly to her rabbit, blissfully unaware of the cruelty happening 3 feet away. And Sarah made a choice in that moment. She would not apologize for feeding her children. "Total is 68.52, the cashier said, her young voice gentle. And as Sarah reached for her debit card with trembling fingers, the woman behind her said loudly, "Oh, great. Now we'll wait forever while she figures out if she has enough money." Sarah's card was halfway to the reader when she heard it, the sound of work boots on linoleum, heavy and purposeful, multiple pairs moving in sync. She turned to see 4 utility workers in dusty orange vests and hard hats walking toward the registers, their faces dirt-smudged from whatever job site they just left. The tallest one, a man with graying hair and kind eyes, stepped directly beside Sarah and said in a voice that carried authority, "Excuse me, ma'am, but I think you dropped something." Sarah looked confused. She hadn't dropped anything, but the worker smiled and pulled out his wallet, extracting a $100 bill and placing it on the counter, his calloused hands steady and sure. "Must have fallen right out of your pocket," he said with a wink that told her this was a gift, not charity. His 3 coworkers immediately understood and stepped forward to one, adding a 50, another a 20. The youngest pulling out his lunch money, a crumpled tenant. Suddenly there was nearly $200 on the counter, and Sarah's vision blurred with tears she could uncontrol. The judgmental woman's mouth fell open, her carefully constructed superiority crumbling, as she realized she'd been wrong, so completely and utterly wrong. And the utility worker who'd started it all turned to face her, his expression pleasant but his eyes sharp as broken glass. "You know, ma'am, we just came from restoring power to a neighborhood that lost electricity, and we saw a lot of folks today who were struggling, who were scared, who were doing everything they could to take care of their families." He gestured toward Sarah. "With respect, this woman right here is working her tail off to feed her kids, and that takes more courage than you'll probably ever understand, so maybe next time you feel the urge to judge someone, you remember that you don't know their story." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Lily's continued humming, and the sound of the cash register beeping, and the woman's face went from smug to scarlet in seconds, her friend suddenly very interested in her phone, both of them shrinking under the weight of being called out. The elderly man behind them stepped forward next, his weathered hand reaching into his jacket. "I'd like to add to that, if it's all right." And he placed another 20 on the growing pile, his voice quiet but firm. "My wife passed 3 years ago, and I know what it's like to count pennies." Jake tugged on Sarah's sleeve, his eyes wide with something like wonder, and whispered, "Mom, are these people angels?" And the youngest utility worker, who couldn't have been more than 22, crouched down to Jake's level. He said, "Nobody. We're just people who believe in helping each other out. And someday when you're grown and you see someone who needs help, you'll remember this day and you'll do the same thing. And that's how we make the world better." The cashier with purple hair was crying openly now, her hands moving quickly to process the sudden windfall. And she looked at Sarah with an expression of solidarity that said, "I see you, I've been you, we're in this together." She added quietly, "My manager's not here right now, so I'm applying my employee discount to your order. It'll save you another 15%. Sarai couldn't speak, couldn't form words past the emotion lodged in her throat like a stone, so she just nodded and mouthed "thank you" over and over while Lily tugged on her pants asking why everyone was crying. The lead utility worker knelt down to the little girl's level, his dirty hands gentle as he said, "Sometimes grown-ups cry happy tears, sweetheart. And today's one of those days." The manager appeared from the back office, drawn by the commotion, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes, who'd clearly seen everything retail had to offer. And when the cashier quickly explained what happened, the manager's expression hardened. She turned to the judgmental women, her voice professional but cold. "Ladies, I'm going to need you to leave your items and exit the store. We reserve the right to refuse service, and we don't tolerate customers who harass other customers." The transformation was instant. The women tried to protest, tried to claim they were just talking, didn't mean anything by it. But the manager was unmoved, pointing toward the exit with the finality of a judge's gavel. As they left empty-handed and humiliated, several other customers actually applauded, a scattered sound that grew into something warmer, something that said, "We're glad they're gone. We stand with you." The utility workers refused to take the extra money back, insisting Sarah keep every penny, and the lead worker pulled a business card from his vest pocket, scribbling something on the back. "This is the number for a local assistance program my church runs. They help with utility bills and rent. No judgment, no hoops to jump through. Just people helping people, and I want you to call them if you need anything." Sarah took the card with shaking hands, her voice finally returning as a whisper. "I don't know how to thank you. I don't." But he stopped her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't need to thank us. You just need to keep being the strong mama you are. And someday when you're back on your feet, you help the next person. That's all the thanks we need." Jake suddenly stepped forward and hugged the youngest worker's leg, the kind of fierce hug that children give when they do you and have words big enough for their feelings. And the young man looked startled, then touched, then emotional. He patted the boy's back and said, "You take care of your mom and sister, all right? You're doing a great job already." As Sarah loaded her bags into the cart now, holding nearly twice as much food as she'd planned to, other customers approached, some slipping gift cards into her bag when they thought she wasn't looking, others just squeezing her hand in passing. One woman wrote her phone number on a receipt and said, "I run a food pantry on Saturdays. You come by anytime. No questions asked. We all need help sometimes." The utility workers walked Sarah and her kids to her car, their presence a protective shield. And as they helped load groceries into a trunk, the lead worker said something Sarah would remember for the rest of her life. The measure of a society isn't how it treats its wealthiest members, it's how it treats its most vulnerable. And you're not vulnerable because you're weak. You're vulnerable because the system failed you. But people, real people, we won't fail you. That night, after the kids were asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table, counting the extra money, still not quite believing it was real, and she found herself crying again. But this time they were tears of relief, of gratitude, of renewed hope. Sometimes the hardest moments reveal who people really are, and sometimes strangers become family through simple acts of seeing each other. Really seeing each other, recognizing that we're all just doing our best with what we have. Don't ever let anyone shame you for surviving, for struggling, for doing whatever it takes to keep your family safe and fed. Your worth isn't measured in dollars. Your strength isn't proven by never needing help. Sarah went back to that store every week after that. And every time she saw the cashier with purple hair, they'd exchange a knowing smile, a reminder of the day kindness showed up in work boots and hard hats. Hit subscribe if this story reminded you that real strength is helping others without judgment. That working class solidarity is one of the most beautiful forces in the world. Dan, drop a comment below. Have you ever been helped by a stranger when you needed it most?